current with using the Zoom meetings, if you would be willing to mute your microphone unless you have something that you need to say, and then you can call yourself in. We don't need to do that for you. And to mute, you can go to this image that's on your page of your face, and if you put your cursor there, you can see the mute up in the upper right-hand corner of that. Click on that, that'll mute your microphone. The second thing is, if you do have something you would like to get either Amanda, our vice president, me, the president, or really any of the other individuals online to deal with, you can do that with a chat. You can click on the chat icon on the bottom of your screen on my computer. I don't know about your Apple products, but you can click on the chat, and then you could type in what your concern is, and we can get back to you. But there's another little trick there. You can also send it to an individual specifically, so the two people could be talking about Dale's beard, and he wouldn't know you were talking about him, and that's fine. I don't have any immediate business. I do know that most individuals want to get into these meetings and have the program. We do want to allow for that, but I have, as I was saying, Bill Nye, the science guy, Wolf, Dale Wolf has done some inventing, and he's done some inventing because he has been utilizing a super DFM honey product, and well, it doesn't matter. They're not going to be able to see it too much, but anyway, this is a probiotic for bees. He does carry this product at his place, but instead of removing the top board and then having to put a tablespoon scattered along the top boards of each hive, he's created this way of blasting it in with an air pump. So the air pump is hooked up to this device. This device is placed inside the front of the deeps, the deep box, and then you can dose, if you will, you can dose your bees with that product. Dale's got more information on it. I'm going to let him do that, but I do think that we do have a program to present to you tonight, and as soon as that's done, we'll call up and I'll be following along to see if there are any chat issues or any conversations that we have to have till this time. So how does that sound, Amanda? Okay.
That's good. Yeah, we're good.
So who's got the video?
Mitch.
Mitch is here.
Yeah, maybe he wants to turn himself on here and give us an introduction.
Ding. Okay, if he doesn't start in 13 seconds, I'll let Dale do it. Okay, there he is.
Oh, I see him. Yeah, he's here.
So tonight we're having Trevor from Lloyd Street Bee speak to us about staying sustainable in your backyard. He is a stationary beekeeper down in Milwaukee, member of the Wisconsin Queen Breeders Association, I think is what we're called. He is very much about getting people to be sustainable and not having to rebuy bees every year, you know. So I think he should be ready.
Thanks for that lovely introduction there, Mitch.
So are you ready?
Yeah, I'm just gonna share my screen here. And then one thing that I ask is that just please save your questions for the end of the presentation. I'm gonna buzz through this pretty quickly, no pun intended there, because I know we're trying to keep this concise to about an hour. If you have questions that pop in your head, just write them in the chat. And then if somebody wants to just kind of act as the admin at the end, feel free to, voice the questions. Does that work for you guys?
Yeah, that looks great.
Absolutely. We'll follow the chats.
It's saying that the host is disabled, participant screen sharing.
Yep, I will make you the host here. That will. All right, you have it.
I would suggest that people go to speaker view if you can, and that'll give you a bigger presentation screen.
All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
All right, awesome. All right, so tonight we're going to be talking about queens in your backyard, so staying sustainable on the small scale. And really what that means to me is that you're no longer on the package train anymore. You're making your own queens, and you're an independent beekeeper at that point. So my name again is Trevor Bawden. I run Lloyd Street Bees, providing local nukes and local queens to Wisconsin and the region as well. So some of this may be remedial to you guys, but we're just going to go through the basics real quick of how a queen is made. So just like any bee in the colony, it all starts with an egg. So that's 0 to 3 days. That turns into a larva for 4 to 8 days, a pupa for 8 to 15, and then on day 16, the queen emerges. And the fascinating part about this is that of the 3 classes that we have in the colony here, the shortest span of development is in the queen. But the flip side, though, is that it's going to take an extra 10 days at least for her to become mated. And so what we have here is we have a little drone comet going on. So for days 0 through 6 after emergence, the virgin queen is going to go around and she's going to eliminate any competing queens. Now, the other bees in the colony are also going to help her a little bit with this. And her process of elimination is usually, if there are cells that haven't emerged yet, she's going to chew a hole through the side and she's going to sting the unsuspecting sister of hers to death. Or if she finds one, it's going to be a face-off, a little one-on-one battle. And she also uses this duration of 6 days to harden her exoskeleton and really become sexually mature so she can go on her mating flight on day 7. So during these mating flights, we're talking about a 1 to 2 mile area from the colony, typically 1.5 miles, but it could be up to 5 miles if she's struggling to find a drone congregation area, also known as a DCA. And mating can be postponed due to weather. We're going to talk about this a few times. And during this mating flight, she can mate with 10 to 40 drones. It's usually around 15. And on day 8 to 10, she's going to be hopefully made safely back to the colony. And we'll be basically taking all that semen that she got from the drones. It's going to be migrating into her spermatheca and then mixing. Now, the fascinating part about the queen mating is that a drone actually carries enough sperm in it to successfully fill the spermatheca. But any workers that are produced from a single drone inseminated queen are going to be too interrelated. So what will happen is the workers will actually go through and start to remove that brood, because we consider these super sisters. And bees, they want as much diversity as possible in a colony. So what happens if this queen does not go on a mating flight, or she doesn't mate with enough queen, or she doesn't mate with enough drones? So what can happen is a drone layer issue, or the queen can run out of sperm early in her career, which results in unfertilized eggs. Typically, what will happen is a supersedure will occur before this happens. So you're probably wondering, okay, I've bought queens before. Why is this happening? Like, why is it that when I get a package that the queen only lasts, it could be till installation or, before the season's over, that my queen's failing? Well, typically in a commercial operation, queen breeders will mate queens for only 10 to 12 days after emergence, and then they're going to pull them from that mating nuke. And the reason why they do this is because the faster they can pull a queen, the quicker the turnaround time is to refill that mating nuke, and they can get another queen going right away. And they're not really checking to see if the queen is laying, so to see what her pattern's like or anything. She might not even have laid an egg yet. She might not have even gone on a mating flight yet because the weather was too poor. Maybe it was a day like today where it's raining, you know, and if we get 3, 4, I don't know, a week of solid rain and they can't go out and mate, well, that 10-day mating schedule is thrown off completely. Another thing that can happen is once these queens are pulled, they can be put into a queen bank. And so that's what we have pictured here. We have multiple queens put on a wood frame, inserted into usually a 10-frame deep colony and held there for, it could be a day until someone comes to pick them up. It could be a month. And in that process, you have to think that you have this organism that just became sexually mature and you're shoving it into a small cage and you're basically denying that queen the opportunity to do what she's supposed to do. And that is lay eggs. And so by cutting off that ability, it really messes with their body. Also, what can happen in a queen bank is the tarsals, also known as the foot pads on the queens, can get chewed off. And the tarsals are important because the tarsals make a pheromone print as the queen walks along the colony. And also they help her hold on to the comb. So she's gonna have issues gripping on the colony or gripping onto the comb. And also there won't be that pheromone signature. And if there's not a strong pheromone signature, that can lead to supersedure. So really, you wanna be asking the questions when you're buying someone, has this queen been banked? And if so, for how long has it been banked for? So there's been some research into proper mating, and by proper mating, I just mean the duration of mating. So there's a study called Queen Honeybee Introduction, Early Survival Effects on Queen Age at Introduction by Rhodes, Summerfield, and Hardin. And what they did was this really cool experiment where they took sister queens. And what sister queens are, it's where you have one mother queen and you're gonna graft from her to make multiple queens. So they're all related. So they should all be genetically the same. So these sister queens were caught and removed from mating nukes at day 7, day 14, day 21, day 28, and day 35. And they had a total of 40 queens in each sample. And 20 samples from each of these days were sent to 2 separate honey producers at opposite ends of Australia. And this study was repeated over the course of 3 years. And we get this really nice chart here. What I want you guys to pay attention to is the column here that says age of queen when caught, and then the total percent column in the middle of the graph there, or sorry, the middle of the chart there. And you'll notice is that on the 21, where it says 21M, we see an 85% success. That's survival success at introduction. If we look at the 7 or 14 day when they pulled her, they only had a 15% survival or a 47% survival at introduction. Now, if we look at the total percent at the complete right side of this chart, we'll see this is a 15-week survival. So this means they came back 15 weeks after to see if she had been superseded or she had been, killed off for any other number of reasons. And what we found was that only 10% survived after a 7-day pull, 15% survived after a 14-day pull, and we finally get above 50% once we hit the 21-day pull. So what this is really showing us here is this nice little graph where the longer the time they're allowed to go mate and lay, the increase in survival we get. So as a result, the best queens were the ones that were pulled between 21 to 28 days. So those had an 82 to 90% survival. And that's even 15 weeks after introduction. So another fun fact was that the location of the apiary did not result in a statistical difference. And why is that important? Because it doesn't matter if this is Northern America, the southern part of America, East Coast, West Coast, like it's all relative. You're gonna get the same results. And this kind of is a really good segue into why does it matter when you make your own queens? Well, if you're using a purchase cell, virgin queen, or a swarm cell, when that queen emerges, goes out and gets mated, and you keep her in that colony, she never gets pulled. There's no 21-day pull time. There's no 28-day pull time. This is her forever home. So she's gonna have a very long and great career. And that's what we're looking for in our queens, because we always wonder, why do our queens lasting long enough? Well, if we weren't, picking them out and shipping them when they're sexually mature and have been mated, we probably wouldn't be running into this issue. So the best queens you can make are the ones that you mate yourself. So you're not going to cause damage by, moving a cell. You're not going to cause damage by introducing a virgin queen. It's really about the mated queens. We can get into more if you want to talk about damage that occurs during shipment due to cold stress or heat stress if you want, but I don't know if we have time for that right now. So you're going to see these question slides pop up. I'm just going to steamroll over these so we can get through this. Now, if you're not familiar with working with queen cells, there's a couple things just to think about. So first off, before we make our splits, we want to make sure we're using healthy colonies to make these splits. So preferably, they're in good performance. Right now, I'm specifically talking about overwintered colonies because we're in spring. If you want to split later in the summer, there's no problem with that. Those could be first-year colonies. It could be a package that you just got. You can split that. And you want to be free of disease. So if you have AFB or EFB and you decide to make 10 splits from that colony, you just turned your headache from 1 headache to 10 headaches. Also, same goes with varroa mites. So I prefer not to split any colonies that have a higher count than 2%. So 2%, that's going to be 6 mites per 300 in your alcohol wash. Because it's great that you're going to get a brood break if you use a cell or a virgin queen when you're making that split up. And that's going to cut the varroa down by about 50% in that brood break. But if you already have like a 10% varroa infestation, like this is just going to become, again, one of those where it turns from 1 headache to 10 headaches when you make that split. You're going to be treating 10 different colonies. It would be much easier to treat the colony first before splitting it if possible. Also remember that cells are fragile and need to be handled with care. So they need to remain at a temperature of 90 to 95 degrees. You also don't want to invert the cell. So you always want to make sure that it stands upright. So you don't want to shake it or anything like that. You could damage the wing buds of the queen. We don't want that to happen. So here's a quick and dirty way to transport some queen cells. So I have in the top right corner there, it's just a water bladder that you can get at Walgreens. I think it holds maybe 1 liter, 2 liters. I like to fill that up with hot tap water, the highest you can get. That's about 115 degrees. And you put that at the bottom of an insulated cooler. I'm talking about a cheap medical cooler here, or maybe something you got your Omaha steaks in, whatever it could be. You want that at the bottom. That's going to act as a thermal ballast. You're going to put some pine shavings in there. You're going to put your cells in, and then optional in the bottom right, you're going to see the little thermometer that you can carry in there, just to make sure that it stays in that safe zone, 90 to 95 degrees. You're going to seal that up. And what I found is that if you keep it sealed, these cells will stay in that magic 90 to 95 degrees for about 5 to 6 hours. So this is really good if you're trying to transport cells across the state. I know that like when the Wisconsin queen breeders meet up, and if somebody wants to do a cell swap and I have to drive all the way to Wausau and back, this is what I use. So when we're taking a queen cell and we're going to put it into the frame, there's a couple things to think about. One is we want to make sure that we're putting this queen cell on a brood frame. And the reason for that is the brood's going to help thermoregulate that cell and keep it warm. Those nurse bees that are tending that brood are also going to be attending that cell. If you put it in a frame of honey, 2 things could happen. 1, you press it in, it gets covered with honey. That's not going to be a good thing. 2, there's no nurse bees typically on a resource frame. So there's going to be no one to take care of it. And then the other thing is, just like when we talk about virgin queens, with cells, you want to make sure that after you've made your split and you put the cell in, you don't want to return until 14 days after to confirm the queen is emergent laying. The reason for this is that 1, virgin queens can fly off when you take the lid off your split sometimes and fly away, because that's what they're made to do. They need to fly so they can go mate. Now, the other thing can happen is it's a very weird transition time for a colony when they're going to a new queen. And if there's some kind of interference, what will happen occasionally is the new queen will get bald. So that's why we want to kind of give her the time to start laying and really get adjusted to the colony. If you're looking at day 14 or after, you're going to start seeing eggs. So that's another sign where if you don't see her, but you see eggs, you know that you have a queen, you know that she's laying. If you wait, like let's say you go day 14, you don't see something, check again on day 21. You should be seeing eggs, larvae, bigger patches at that point. It should be easier to spot, especially if you're an individual who has trouble seeing eggs like in the first place. Some tips and tricks with working with cells is I like to use a cell protector. So that's the top right. And then if you don't have these fancy orange cell protectors that you can get at Man Lake or Daedon, or even direct from China, you can make them out of some aluminum foil. And this picture here, they're made out of a torn up cigarette package with some painter's tape. It works just fine. So it's just something to protect the cell from either getting banged around when you're placing it in the colony so it doesn't get squished. They have little teeth on them so you can put it into the comb. And just in case the bees get a mind of their own, they want to try and chew it down, they'll protect it from that. Some people like to feed some thin syrup the days before and after cell introduction. I don't find this to be very beneficial. I like to save those types of like resources and labor for after she's laying to give them a little bit of boost. And then you also want to make sure that the cells are hot. And by hot, I don't mean the temperature of the cell. What I mean by hot is that they're ready to emerge within 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, but that's kind of far out there. Like I want this queen to be popping basically when she goes in. Now, when you're working with virgin queens, you have to remember they are fast. They're able to fly well because that's what they need to do to mate. And they have extremely good agility because they have a non-extended abdomen at that point. So she's going to look smaller. She's going to look like more like a worker bee at that point. The abdomen only gets extended after she's mated and she starts to fill out to lay eggs. That's why you'll notice that when you have a queen that's going to go in a swarm, they put her on a diet. They put her on an exercise plan. They don't let her eat and they keep her moving, and that shrinks her down. So it's kind of like reverting back to virgin queen in a way. The cool part though is like when you're working with virgin queens, they're very easy to transport. It's the same thing as if you've ever transported a mated queen. You can use a queen cage, like I prefer a SCVBA. You could use a matchbox, pill bottle, film canister. I don't even know if they make film canisters anymore, but I have some and I've used them. You just want to make sure that's vented and make sure it's kept out of direct sunlight. And then virgin queens can be directly introduced on a frame if the colony is hopelessly queenless. And what I mean by hopelessly queenless is that you've made the split up 7 days before you're trying to directly release this virgin. And the reason why is that on that 7-day mark, you're going to go in, you're going to cull any cells that they made because they're going to make some queen cells, but they'll have run out of genetic material at that time to make any more queens. So they're just like, dear God, just give us something, anything. We will take anything at this point. But my preferred way of doing virgin queen introduction though, is to make the split, put in the SCVBA cage with the candy plug. Doesn't have to be a full candy plug, could be just a small one. And then I like to put tape over the candy. And I used to use painter's tape, but I ran into a couple of instances where the worker bees actually chewed through the painter's tape, got into the plug, and then early released her. We don't want that to happen. So what I suggest is using electrical tape. They're not going to chew through that, and that works really well. So once I put that cage in, I come back 4 to 5 days later. That means full days. It's not like if you put it in at like, dusk tonight that you're going to come back in 3 days and you're going to consider that 4 days. No, you want 4 to 5 nights. And with that, on let's say day 5, I come back, I look at my split, I cull any queen cells that are in there, and I take that tape off, put the queen frame back in, and then return in 14 days. Now, for those who don't want to purchase cells or virgin queens, or they aren't interested in learning grafting, what you can do is you can actually make a push-in cage for swarm cells. And if you aren't familiar with the push-in cage, it is a fantastic way to introduce queens. But you can make a smaller version of it and place it over your swarm cell. And what will happen is the virgin queen cannot emerge into the colony. She's trapped inside this little cage. And this is great because I'm sure a lot of us have opened up a colony that, like maybe it's already swarmed, it's preparing to swarm, and we have all these capped queen cells, and you're like, oh man, I'm gonna make all these splits here. But then it turns out that all these cells are just on 1 or 2 frames. Well, with this, if you have 15 queen cells on 1 frame, you can put this pushing cage on top of each one of them, have 15 virgin queens then when you come back after they emerge, and make as many splits as you want. And if you're saying, Trevor, I don't need 15 virgin queens, well, it's a good time to make some friends in the club and offer them up. You could either give them for free, you could sell them for whatever you think the price is worth, and help other people make splits at that point. I will say though that if you use the pushing cage over the cell, make sure you put a rubber band around it, because when I used to do this a long time ago, I remember I pulled out the frame that had all the cages on it, and the bees had chewed the comb around the cages, so they weren't stuck in that much anymore. And almost all the cages fell out, and there was like all these virgin queens running around all at the same time inside the colony. It was just total chaos. So we don't want that to happen. So I suggest you put a rubber band on each. When you go to pull the frame out, you take it out, shake the bees off, go into your car, go into your house, wherever, depending on where your yard is. And at that point, start to remove the cages one by one and catching the queens, because again, they are fast and they will fly. And if you're in a confined space, it's very easy to catch them versus, you're doing in the field and you're rushing and you're got all these bees around you, you might get nervous. So definitely make sure that you're doing it in a closed space. And then if you want more details on how to make a pushing cage, you can look on my website under queen introduction, and I have the plans for there along with some pictures. The only difference is you're just going to want to make your pushing cages smaller than my queen introduction cages. That's all. So we've talked a lot about queens, but let's talk about cultivating good genetics in our apiary. So let's say we don't have any stock that we really like. Well, let's start by introducing some new stock that we like. So ideally, we want it to be hygienic. We want it to have disease resistance, a good demeanor. We don't want angry bees. No one likes having angry bees, especially when it's 90 degrees out and you don't want to put your suit on. It's really nice to work with somewhat gentle bees. And then honey production, if that's your thing. We can do this by cultivating our existing stock by one, culling of drone cells of lesser hives. This is something that we don't really think about too much, is that we have colonies that, maybe we're just using it for a brood factory because we know that it's not that great of a colony. Well, we don't want those genetics via the drones to be getting out, because if we're trying to make queens, or if our neighbors are trying to make queens, those drones are going to mate with those queens, and you're going to pass on these inferior genetics. So what we can do is we can cull the queen, or we can cull the drone cells. If we're going to cull the queen, to make sure we're replacing it right away. And then we also want to make sure we keep stock that works for our management style. If you're an individual who likes to treat 5 times a year, and that's your management style, then that's the type of bee you're going to develop. And that works for you if you're having success going over winter. For me, I like to keep stock that I have to treat minimally or not treat at all. And that's my style. It could be that your style is you like to suit up because you like really angry bees. I don't know, but cultivate to the style that you like. We want to make sure we're retaining traits too. So if we keep going down the rabbit hole of, breeding off the mother, then the daughter's daughter, down the road, we're really diluting these genetics. So we want to make sure that we're bringing in additional new stock that meets our needs. We want to do that seasonally to increase vigor, because that way we won't get too inbred. And also, these may be new traits that we want to add, but just be careful when you if you're trying to bring in new traits, because you want to have time to evaluate these, okay? So you're saying to yourself, okay, this is a long list of demands here that we've created. And you're like, I would love to have queens like this. I'd love to have stock that survives in my area, because the southern queens just aren't doing it for me. They brood up too quick. They're just not manageable for my style. Well, you can create demand for good genetics by reducing the purchase of commercial queens. So buy queens that are reared in the similar USDA zone as your own. Same thing as if you're going to plant a flower or a fruit tree. The closer it is to your area, the better. So support your local queen breeders, whether that's Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, because they're going to have stock that's going to be adapted to the region. They're going to have survivor traits, and it's going to have a positive effect on your stock. One of the things that I'm really looking forward, the stock that I keep is Varroa sensitive hygiene. And there's a lot of talk about hygienic traits in bees. Now, this isn't to be confused with the line of the Minnesota hygienic, okay? So the Minnesota hygienic was developed for a resistance to brood disease. That's AFB, EFB, chalk brood, even though chalk brood is not a disease. But the point being is that was developed for those specific reasons. Varroa sensitive hygiene bees, which were discovered by Harbaugh and Harris in 1995, were developed specifically to target the reproductive Varroa. And the reason why I have reproductive bolded in this slide for you is because that's the important part. They're not going after non-reproductive Varroa, okay? A non-reproductive Varroa is not going to increase in your colony. A reproductive Varroa is what's going to give you that crash at the end of the season. So these bees with the trait at a high level of expression are going to significantly remove and reduce your mite count, okay? So what they've seen is anywhere between 40 to 80% in Varroa reduction with VSH bees. Now, I want to say buyer beware with this, because if you're buying queens from someone who says they have VSH bees, you need to ask them what method they're using to identify VSH. And that pretty much goes for anything. If someone's saying that they have super hygienic bees, if they have mite biter bees, if they have any kind of trait, I want to know, what are you doing to test for this? And what I'll speak about quickly here is with VSH, not all tests are created equally. So if someone's using a freeze kill method where they're freezing with liquid nitrogen about 300 cells, coming back 24 hours later and looking for what type of removal, the percent of removal, typically they want 95% or higher. That's hygienic testing. That's not VSH testing. So for VSH, you should be using the Harbaugh test, which is what I use. And that's where you're taking a frame of cap brood, you are removing the pupae in 100 cells, and you're counting reproductive mites at that point. And this is a very strict test. So to get like the gold standard 5-star, that would have to mean that you go through every single cell and you would find no reproductive mites. And at that point, you got to redo your work again and do another 100 just to make sure you didn't miss something. Now, for the lowest rung of like breeder material, that means only 4 reproductive mites are found out of 100. So it's very, very like narrow window that we're shooting for here. And the reason why you may find out that a lot of people don't do this in the breeding programs because it takes time. You know, it's not as easy as doing a mite wash. It's not as easy as like just, you know, freezing some bees. It takes time. Now, back to drones. In case you aren't familiar with the birds and bees, I'll tell you this: worker bees are fertilized, come from fertilized eggs. That makes them diploid. Drones come from unfertilized eggs, which makes them haploid. So what that means when they're using an unfertilized egg is that that drone carries an exact copy of the queen's genes due to being haploid unfertilized. That means exact copy. So this is again why if you have a poor queen, you don't want to let her make drones, okay? But if you have a great queen, it's a good opportunity to take advantage of those drones, because we not only need good queens that we're gonna be you know, grafting or making splits from, we also need great drones. And so that's why don't forget to cultivate these colonies for drones as well, okay? Now, you may hear the term survivor stock thrown out every now and then. That's basically the retention of genes from proven winners from previous winter survival, okay? Now, ideally, we want colonies that are untreated or have reduced treatment stock. And for a survivor, in my definition, it's a queen that's survived 2 to 3 winters at least before I'm using her to graft from. Now, you may say, Trevor, I don't have queens that have survived 2 to 3 winters. That's a long time. Well, if it survived 1 winter, that's better than completely unproven stock, because at least you know that it can survive with your management style. If it's unproven and you just got this queen and you start grafting from her, you're going to run into issues where maybe she's a superstar. Maybe it turns out she's great. But what if she's just a dropout and you've made all these copies of this dropout queen, and now you have an apiary of just dropouts, and that doesn't sound fun. That doesn't sound like a good year. We only get so many beekeeping years, so we got to take advantage of it. Now, with survivor stock, we talk about cultivating northern versus southern queens. So you've probably all read at least one paper, blog post, or someone's rant on Facebook about the difference between northern versus southern queens. Well, through the SARE grant, we have this really awesome study by Erin McGregor, who's based in Northeast Maine. And she compared the strength and winter survival rates of 3 groups of honeybee colonies. So we look at colonies started with traditional commercial queen packages from the south. We have colonies started with northern raised overwinter nucleus colonies. And we have colonies that started with traditional packages, but were requeened with northern raised queens in the middle of the season. And they repeated this study over the course of 3 years. So they looked at a comparison of strength and survivability, and you're like, what does that mean? So their sample size was 24 to 50 colonies per year, and they were all kept in the same yard. Half the packages were randomly selected mid-June to be requeened by northern queens from Vermont and northern New York, because that's Erin's area, okay? And all colonies were treated with Apple Life Bar in the fall. And what they rated them on, though, was not only if they survived like a binary, 1 or 0, like either alive or dead, but also on the strength of buildup coming out of winter. So we have the results here from the last study they did. This was 50 packages started and 25 requeened. And if we look here on the bottom in the green, just to make it super simple, we have packaged queens. And what that means is this is the package they installed with the queen they installed. They had 7 live out of 25. And for northern queens, so this is package they installed but requeened in June, they had 20 survive. So difference between 28% survival versus 80% survival. Also notice in the disqualified category here, that includes swarming or supersedure. They had 7 of those for packaged queens. They had 1 for northern queens. We can also look at the strength of these colonies. So coming out of winter, we had 8 strong versus 1 package. I want to bring up the results now. This is for the 3-year results overall. So if you weren't convinced with 1 year, let's look at all 3 years. So again, we look at the bottom at the green bars there. We see 15 out of 43 that survived versus 29 out of 43 for the northern queen. So that's packages that were requeened with northern queen. And we look at the northern nucleus colonies. They had 18 that went in, 13 came out alive after 3 years. And the strength, though, is also fascinating. So 8 that were average to strong for packages, 25 that were average to strong for northern, and 11, so 61% there for the nucleus. So what does this mean, Trevor? Well, it means that requeen is a super simple task that doesn't cost a lot, doesn't take a huge amount of skill or technique, and causes little disruption to the colony, but has really big payoffs. And if you're concerned about requeening around the solstice with the honey flow going on, well, the good thing is that they're more willing to accept a queen during the honey flow. And if it takes about 5 days to introduce a queen and an extra 2 for her to really start laying, you've only lost a week at that point. And if you're doing it at the end of June, you've probably have almost all of your workforce for the rest of the flow has already been created at that point. So you're really not losing anything at all. So just to sum it up again, colonies headed by northern queens had a 75% survival rate over the course of the 3 seasons, and 64% of them were ready for spring upon final inspection, versus 45% survival rate for standard package queens, and 24% of them were ready for spring. So just to give you a little heads up, now we're going to be talking about splits. Some of this is going to be a little rudimentary, or if you've never made a split, this is going to be a total novel concept. If you're used to making splits, go grab a beer, relax for a second. Now, with splits, if you make one in June and July, it has to be a little bit stronger than one made in May, due to them having less time to build up before winter. And so if we're looking at this diagram I have here, we see the first position 1 drawn comb, then 2 brood, a honey, and then another drawn comb. That would be the ideal to be making up a split in the beginning of July, because they're going to have enough resources, they're going to have pre-drawn comb for them, so they can just explode and just take off. Now, if you're freaking out because you're like, Trevor, I don't have that much drawn comb, that's okay. You can use foundation, but just know you're going to have to feed them to get them to draw that comb. Even if there's a flow on, it always helps to feed them. This is going to do a couple things for you. One, you're going to get a brood break if you're using a cell or virgin queen. It's a huge leap forward in sustainability if you're doing this either in May or at the end of the season, because if you're doing it in May, you had, let's say, 3 colonies that survived out of your 6, you can build back up to 6 very easily by making splits. And you also get to take advantage of your survivor stock and local breeding. So that means the local drones that are in your area and the queens that you really like. So I'm just going to lay out a little bit of math for you at this point. So with each brood frame, we're going to think about this as it's 75% covered with cap brood, which is equal to about 4,800 unemerged developing bees, because typically it's pretty rare to find that beautiful wall-to-wall frame. And even if we had that, I don't know if I'd ideally want to put that in a split. That's a lot of brood for the bees to take care of. And if you have a frame that's 75% covered, this is 75% covered with bees crawling on the frame, that's about 1,500 bees. So with 3 frames of bees, you're looking at basically more than, like if you have 3 frames of bees covering it plus what needs to emerge, that's basically stronger than a package. That's pretty strong, okay? Now you're saying, well, what if I want to be frugal and I just want to use 1 frame of brood and bees to make a split? Well, that's going to be enough to get your queen mated, but that's not going to be enough to really make up a nuke that's going to be ready for winter. So what you could do is you can be frugal and use 1 frame, and by all means, I do this, and then come back after you know you have a mated queen and boost that nuke with another frame of brood from another colony. That's going to get them back up to speed. But in the perfect world, you want to be starting all your nukes with 2 frames of brood and 3 frames of bees. And just don't freak out though if it seems like you don't have a ton of bees crawling around everywhere, just because it only takes a palm-sized cluster of bees to keep that cap brood warm in the nuke box. This is why it's very important to use cap brood. It's a lot more resource intensive for you to use uncapped brood. And they may even cannibalize it in the process because they know they can't take care of it. You also need to know that when you start these nukes, you're going to be gaining and losing bees due to age. So by the time the first brood emerges, you may have less bees than you anticipate. So we're going to break it down to 4 different categories here. We're going to talk about mated queens for splits. We're going to talk about cells, virgins, and we're going to talk about walkaway, letting them make their own. So with a mated queen, we have 7 days till release and lay. So that's your 5 days till release and then 2 days till she really starts laying. So about 28 days until the first new brood emerges. So in 30 days, we have about 16,000 bees. The pro is that the colony is off to a fast start because you have a mated queen, but the cons are that you have no brood break. It's a higher cost for a mated queen. I mean, by cost is money in your pocket. You can get probably 4 or 5 cells or 3 virgins for the price of 1 mated queen. So if you think about it, it's a way more economical to use an unmated queen. So with a virgin queen, we have 10 days to get mated. And again, this is in a perfect world that it only takes 10 days. But also think that if you, let's say, purchase a virgin queen from someone and she emerged 3 or 4 days before, that just cut down 3 or 4 days from your mating time. So she could go out and get mated faster. It doesn't have to be 7 days if you're buying a virgin queen. It could be 6 days. But for the sake of this example, we're going to say 10. So that means 31 days from mating till emerging of the first brood. And 30 days out, we'll have about 15,000 bees in the colony. Again, we're talking about starting with 2 frames of capped brood and 3 frames of bees. The pros are that you get a brood break, the queen is alive and presumed viable, low cost, and by alive and viable, I mean that she's mated, she's laying, she's looking good. Cons are that she may not return from a mating flight, and mating could be delayed due to weather. Now, I get a lot of questions about may not return from mating flight. Well, I can tell you this, that when I sell queen cells and virgin queens, typically people have a 75% return on mating. So it's not bad if you could get 3 virgin queens for the price of a mated queen. You're probably going to walk away with at least 2 mated in the process. And then mating can also be delayed due to weather. With a cell, we have 14 days because we have to have some cook time in there, because let's say it's 48 hours till she emerges, plus she she has to harden and whatnot, you know. She's got to go through a couple more steps than a virgin queen does. So we're looking at 35 days out from mating till first brood emerges, which puts us at 30 days at about 14,000 bees. Again, pros, we get brood break. Nice part is they're really easy to introduce. There's no coming back to it. You know, it's just pop the cell in, come back 14 days. It's like set it and forget it. And it's a low cost and it's free if you use a swarm cell. Now, the cons are they are difficult to transport if you're getting from somebody. The timing is critical. But what I mean by that is if that's a hot cell, you have to get that in there immediately, because otherwise you're going to end up with a virgin queen that you have to babysit. And another con is, again, may not return from mating, and mating could be delayed due to weather. Now, we get into the basics. Everyone's probably heard of a walk-away split. You know, taking a frame of eggs and a larvae, putting in a nuke, letting the bees raise their own queen. Well, let's see. When we break it down, though, it's going to take 13 days till that queen emerges. Now, if we remember from the beginning of this talk, an egg is 0 to 3 days. The bees are going to use larvae at that point to make a queen, and that takes 13 days. Okay, so that's where we get the 13 days from. And she emerges on day 16. Okay, so we're 16 days in there. Well, now we have 14 days to go get mated. All right, because she's got to emerge, get hardened, you know, eliminate any competition, yada, yada, yada. So it's 48 days till the first brood emerges, okay? 48 days. That's insane, all right? At that point, you may have 15,000 bees left still, but these are old bees, all right? These are geriatric bees. These are bees that like are not long for this world at that point. So what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to boost that back up most likely. So the pros are you have a very long brood break, okay? So that's gonna help knock down varroa. And there's really no special equipment required, you know, or skill. The bees do all the work, you know, all you're doing is popping in a frame. Now the cons are, again, large amount of population dwindling over the 48 days, and you're making emergency queens, which might be of lower value. And the reason why I say that is because you're not the one selecting which larva they're going to use. So they're going to be using some larva that maybe is in the primo time zone. That's that 3 day, you know, the egg just hatched and just turned into a larva. And that's going to be a really nice queen. They're also going to pick larva that's 6 days old. And that's really old larva. And what we found is that when you use older larva to graft from, you get an inferior queen because she's not getting fed that royal jelly diet for the full time of her upbringing. So it's going to be a subpar queen. And you're like, well, you know, maybe the other one will do better. and the older one won't hatch or something. Well, here's what's going to happen. Most likely that older larva, it's going to emerge first, and then that's the one that's going to systematically go through and kill all the queens that are still developing. So you're most likely going to wind up with an old low value queen. Again, more resources to keep the population going, and same issues as cells and virgins for mating, return, and weather. So we have this really fun little graph here for you, and we look at the basically concentrate on the 56-day mark. And we look at mated, which is the blue line, we have 40,000 bees. We look at the red line, virgin, about 35, cell, about 32, and our sad purple line here, which is our walkaway split, which is just not even hitting 20,000 at that point. So really, we look at the cell and virgin, and we're not losing that much steam in the colony compared to just popping in a mated queen. So if you're worried about what your population is going to be, don't freak out with a cell or virgin queen. It's almost as good for population as a mated, but the walkaway just leagues behind the rest. So this kind of gets into cavity size, the start population, and the growth chart. And you're probably wondering, okay, so what does cavity size have to do with anything we've been talking about today? Well, when you want to be frugal about splitting your bees, the big things are time, resources, bee ratio, and cavity size. And we've talked about time, we've talked about resources, we've talked about bee ratio. So on to cavity size here. You cannot make a 2-frame split in a 10-frame deep box. That is much too large of a space for those bees, okay? If you're only putting in a frame of brood and a frame of honey in a 10-frame cavity size, it is too big, okay? Why is it too big? Thermoregulation. They cannot police and heat that whole size. It's like if you had one fireplace going in a mansion and expecting the whole thing to be warm. It's just not gonna work. So John Harlow in 1985 came out with this excellent study called The Effects of Population Size on Brood Production, Worker Survival, and Honey Gain in Colonies of Honeybees. We're gonna eliminate honey gain. We're not worried about that right now. So what you should be worried about though is a cohort of about 4.5 thousand bees. So when we think about 4.5 thousand, let's think back to a previous slide where one frame of bees that's covered 75% is going to be 1,500 bees. So we're talking 3 frames of bees. Again, this is why 3 frames is the magic number, because they have a capability of rearing brood at a ratio of 3 to 1 in a nuke box cavity. It's a standard 5-frame nuke box cavity. You can put them in a 3-frame cavity if you want. That'll work too. Probably even be better. But that means one nurse bee can raise 3 other bees. Amazing. Compare this to a cohort of 9,000 bees, which is about 6 frames. So we've already breached the capacity of the nuke, so we have to go to the 10-frame box at this point. They can run at a net neutral of resources because they have foragers at that point. They're not going to be so needy, but they only have the capability of producing brood on a 2 to 1 level. So that means one nurse bee can only create 2 other bees. So less is more sometimes. So how does this play a role in overwintering colonies? Well, if you have 3 frames of bees coming out of winter, they're going to do way better in a smaller cavity than if you leave them in that 10-frame box. Same thing goes if they go into winter that way. Like, we want the appropriate cavity size for the appropriate amount of bees. And this is why, in the next slide, you'll see here, this nice little chart. This is why I go for 9,000 bees per cavity, like a 10-frame cavity if I'm going into winter, okay? Because we can look and we see in the left-hand column here, the initial adult population, and then the number of brood cells after 19 days. You're gonna have folks that are overwintering in 2, 3 deeps, and you're the gentleman or lady that wants that 35,000 bee population coming out of winter, and you're saying, look at this, Trevor. I got 18,000 cells of brood right now. This is so cool. Versus me, who has 9,000, and my bees have 16,000 cells of brood at that point. And you're like, oh man, Trevor, you don't have as much as me. So, you know, that's why like my triple deep is so much better. Well, the thing is, if you're using 9,000 bees, I can make 4 of these. Okay, I can make 4 deeps going into winter with the same amount of bees that you just used to make your triple deep. And I'm gonna have about 3 times as much brood from those deeps than you got from yours. So again, this is where cavity size plays a role, whether it's making splits because we want them to build up as quickly as possible, or if we were coming out of winter or going into winter. So we're going to wrap it up here, just talking about selecting swarm cells, and then I'll let you guys off the hook. So with selecting swarm cells, always use caution because you don't want ones that are surrounded by drone comb, and I'll show more about that in the next slide. And you don't want ones that protrude past, or I'm sorry, you want cells that protrude past the comb. Smaller cells may be from old or underfed larvae, so it looks like a little acorn sticking out. That's a runty little cell. If it looks like a full-size shelled peanut, you know, I'm sorry, a peanut in the shell, that's a nice cell. That's a good one. And cells should only be created when resources are plentiful, okay? That means if we're in a dearth, you're not gonna be able to make as good queens as if we're on a flow. Or you need to supplemental feed that colony that's making swarm cells. And I don't really know how it's even possible because you probably don't want them to make swarm cells. Now, if a colony swarms outside of the normal season, and by what normal for me in my area, that's May. And for you guys, I don't know if that's late May, beginning of June, that's your normal ideal season for a colony to reproduce. Now, if a colony is swarming in May and June and July and August, and it's just swarm crazy, that is not stock worth keeping. You are just perpetuating that trait of swarming. You may be able to make up a lot of splits because you have all these cells, but you're just making yourself a lot of headaches in the long run. So I would encourage you not to perpetuate swarm-prone stock. Now, we were talking about not selecting cells close to drone. Well, that's because they can turn into drag queens. What do I mean by a drag queen? Well, that is when a drone is put into a queen cell because the colony is so desperate. They're like, we need to make a queen out of something. And so they make these just insanely long cells. They're about 3 inches long and about 95% royal jelly. And at the very little tip, you'll have a drone that's being developed. So bigger is not always better sometimes. So always be careful when you see a queen cell in the middle of a patch of drones like this. That is not going to be the queen that you want. All right, and now time for some shameless advertising here. So queen cells, virgin queens, mated queens, typically nukes, but I'm sold out at this point, are for sale. So please contact me at lloydstreetbees.com to reserve your orders. We have gotten a lot lately. As the weather turns better, people's focus turns back to bees. And if you're interested in mite-resistant bee breeding, feel free to contact me about that too. I love to you know, encourage you and go over your plans and whatever I can do to kind of help you. And on that note, I'm going to stop sharing and I'll turn it back to you guys.
That was phenomenal. Thank you very, very much. Whole mess of information, and I hope we learned something from it. I asking if anybody has any questions. One way you can do that is to put it in the chat and we could have Lloyd take a look at that. Otherwise, you could ask him directly for a few minutes here if anyone has something they need to raise. I wish we could all applaud you. Phenomenal. I am overwhelmed with the information that you have. And so, yeah, put some thumbs up or share in the chat. There's a woohoo.
We accept woohoos too. That's good. No,
I-
again, I know I threw a lot at you guys really quickly there. I just hope that some of it stuck, you know, because
Mhm.
there's just so much to talk about on this topic that I'd always struggle to fit it in time. But I just never want to leave anything out. And, you know, the more
Mhm.
years you do this, the more you know, consume and the more you just want to like share. So I guess you're at my mercy at that point.
Yes, we are. Well, another piece with it is there really was a lot of information, but we do now have a resource that we can draw from. And as for many of us as non-veteran beekeepers, this gives us a great place to start, and we'll be feeding from this trough for a while, I think. So thank you, thank you, thank you. It will be added to the members page on the website in a few days. So thank you, Amanda, for taking care of that. It's one of those assets of being a member of our Beekeepers Association. And I am going to pause our meeting here unless I see some questions or anything that we could push over to this discussion. I wanted to highlight some of the aspects of our club. So if we might have a membership update, you know, how are you doing on our membership? If Amanda or Andrea is able to share that. If we have anything we need to raise from our mentor coordinators, I'll give you an opportunity to say something. Carl, with the church hives, we're gonna wait for your lead on that. And if you wanted to take a moment to speak to that, would be greatly appreciated. And then if anybody has any clue what's happening with the county fairs, just know that we depend on our beekeepers to help us facilitate the booth there, especially if we're even able to pull them on. So I'm going to come back round full circle. Do we have anything to be shared from in terms of Andrea and our membership? Do we have?
It was just that good. That's what that means.
Yeah. Well, our membership has been growing. We've been getting new individuals periodically. Jerome, I don't know, do you have something that you might want to share with us on where we are with our treasurer's report?
Yeah, I can give you that information. Our treasury right now is at 8425, $8,425. We have one outstanding invoice for last month's speaker that we're trying to figure out how to pay him. But I deposited 4 membership checks yesterday, so we're in good shape.
Awesome, thank you. I do see Amanda has made mention that Logan would like to give an update on his youth mentorship hives. And Logan, I would welcome that right now if you're ready.
I think I muted. My beehive died, but they were alive on February 27th, but then a week later, I think it was a week, but on March 18th they died, and I don't know how.
Lloyd, do we have, is anybody connected with you from the mentorship program since that morbidity occurred?
I'm planning to come down in the next couple days, early next week, to go through the hive with them.
Okay, good.
So I will set up a time with them.
Thank you. Lloyd, I want you to know, it's happened to me too. All right. And we just want to encourage you. Sometimes there's a bit of a hard knocks on that, and we got to deal with it. Dave Lambert's got something to share in terms of the Youth Mentor Program. Dave, if you want to go ahead.
Yep, sure. A couple of things. Just an update on the one of our other youths from last year, Adeline. She started with one hive last year, ended up with 2 going into the winter, came out of winter with 2 and still has 2. So she had some pretty good success this year. And Saturday morning at 11 a.m., I'm going over to her house. She's got some sugar water on them, and we'll take a quick look at them and see what they look like at that time. The other thing I wanted to mention on the Youth Beekeeping Partnership Program for 2021, I currently have one individual that will be getting a scholarship from us. She's located in Elmwood, Wisconsin. Her name is Sage. And so we're looking for somebody that might be able to help support her and mentor her over the next couple of years. So I'll be working with Mitch Wayne on getting all the supplies together for this individual. And I just the end of last week, I received a call from Sam, a 15-year-old. And Sam is going to be applying for the program again this year. I know it's a little bit late in the season, but I want to make sure that we give as many youth as we possibly can the opportunity to raise bees. So we might have one more for the 2021 season. So that's all I have to report out on.
Okay, so I'm seeing Annette has said that, or Annette, yes, Sage is waving at you. One of the few faces on the screen. And Sage, welcome aboard. We promise we will do our best to have a productive year for you. Greatly. Oh, another face in there. Good.
Yeah, and just so again, looking for somebody in the Elmwood area that might be able to step up and help mentor Sage as as the season starts to unwind here over the next few weeks. So
Yeah.
looking for somebody to step up and assume some responsibility there.
Thank you, Dave. I think we need to do that. We need to step up for that. Quick question that I would like. I asked Mitchell this yesterday. It's been nice outside. I mean, it's really been some pretty decent weather. And I'd asked him about, is it time to take off my insulated covers? Should I remove the insulation from the top? And I think that's a greenhorn question to ask, but yet I'm thinking there might be other people that are feeling, hey, we're getting July weather right now. Why don't we just open things up? And Mitchell had encouraged me, this is still early season. And I can attest for the fact that we have had 4 to 6 inches of snow in May, and I don't think the bees are going to like that very much. So I think warmer is better at this point. Do we have any other comments that need to be shared from program? Mitchell, can you give us an update for next month? You got anything for us?
But let me find the unmute button again. Currently, I'm speaking, and I think Melanie is going to speak about how we go about making nukes. I think we both do it slightly differently.
Okay.
Give you different opinions on how to make nukes for wintering.
Good.
Or increase.
Productive.
I should have queen cells available this summer if anyone's interested. So if you ever need to, I will try to post it on the Facebook page when I'm going to have them available.
Awesome. And Mitch, that's a panel, right? So people should come with questions.
Yep.
That's format. Okay. So
I think we're gonna present and then people can ask questions at the end.
okay, that's good. Then they
Because it's hard to completely panelize it with 2 people.
right.
I'd rather put together a small slideshow of my equipment because I use 4-frame equipment, 6-frame equipment. 10 frame equipment. So I'm very different than most people.
We know that, Mitch. Anyway, God bless you. I'm gonna pick on Dale. Dale did ask for a couple minutes to talk about this DFM. And Dale, you got to talk now.
Okay.
I'm starting the
Okay.
timer.
All right. Okay, timer. All right. This DFM is a direct fed microbiome. And how this got born or started is this Carol Hoffman, woman from Michigan, is a beekeeper. Her husband is actually an engineer for Ford Motor Company, but she keeps bees and a small farm. And she started, we all got problems. So she started thinking, bees are considered livestock, and other types of livestock, baby chicks, baby calves, baby pigs and stuff, are fed different
Probiotics.
vitamins, probiotics, and when they're little, just to get them going and healthy. And she started thinking about this, and then she contacted strong microbiomes out of Milwaukee and talked to them about it, and they were all for doing some research. And so she started bringing them bees so they could look at the bee's gut in the microscope and getting a better idea of what was going on. And they put together formula, and this started probably 10 years ago. This product has been on the market for about 7 years, and I didn't really get excited about it until about 2 years ago when I attended the American Beekeeping Federation. It was outside of Chicago 2 years ago. And it started making a lot of sense because the bees today are struggling with chemicals out there. These GMO crops are producing poison pollen, and the stuff that's out there that isn't killing the bee outright is affecting their gut, their digestive system. So it's kind of like having a stomach ache. You don't feel like doing much work when you're not feeling good. So they put together formulas, and they actually have seven types of beneficial bacteria in this product to help the bee's gut. And so if the bees are getting into stuff that's affecting their gut, by giving them this strong microbiome, it helps to strengthen their gut and get it back in shape. And another thing, like in the spring of the year now, if you're feeding artificial pollen patties, that's good, but these pollen patties do not have the bacteria in it. And so if you are feeding pollen patties, it's good to feed this DFM along with it.
Okay, how much does the product cost?
We have packets that are for 2 hives, 10 feedings. So you feed them about once a month. It's a powder, and you just sprinkle it on top bars until in the summertime, when you start putting supers on, you need to be feeding this all summer long. And that, when you start putting supers on, then I put together this tool that you can put it into the bottom bar or bottom cord entrance, and then you have it hooked up to a little air pump.
Yep.
And just push it, and it blows it right into the entrance, and they'll clean it up. They clean that stuff up faster than anything.
How much?
Oh, $16.95 for enough for 2 hives for the whole summer.
Okay, 2 hives for the whole summer, $16.95. Dale's got it, a blue light special up there at Wolf Honey Farms, and he also has the DFM blaster on sale there. Anybody else tried some of this? I know that other people have talked about utilizing this.
This is Dan.
Yep.
A large migratory beekeepers say they use it all the time, and it does away with nosema.
Wonderful. Awesome.
So-
I don't want to cut you off, Dale, but I do need to cut you off because that's what I do.
No, he's true. He's right about that. That because it keeps your gut healthy, and leukemia is a gut disease, so it just eliminates that totally.
The other thing that Dale didn't mention, and I'll say it now, is that we talked yesterday or the day before, whenever it was, that don't be reversing your hives right now.
Thank you.
Leave the brood in the top. It's where it needs to be and to stay warm.
Okay. When do you suggest to do that? Are you saying May?
Never.
There you are. Okay. Jerome, you got to unmute yourself if you're going to
Yeah.
talk. Go ahead.
I'm gonna jump in at this point. Brad and I bought 40 pounds of that Pro DFM a couple years ago. We've tried it a little bit. I can't see any difference at all. You know, I've still got probably,
And you
well,
froze.
we split it
Jerome,
by, we split 20 pounds each, and I think I still got 15 pounds left. So take it for what it's worth. Back on your issue of the fair, Pierce County Fair is planning on going ahead and having a fair and having a round barn open and so and right now, of course, it's subject to cancellation, but they're planning on having a fair.
And that's in
I
August, right, Jerome?
am here.
Okay.
Got the date on that, Jerome?
Well,
Jerome, what's the
it's,
date on that?
I'd have to go take a look. I've
Okay.
got the sign up information there. It's the second week in August. Second weekend in August, whatever, 8th, 9th, something in that range.
12, 13, 14, 15. So that'd be Thursday through Sunday.
Yeah, bingo.
Okay, thank you. And that's pretty much what I'm doing around here. I plan things and then I cancel them. And if you don't plan them, they're not going to take place anyway. So I hope that when we are able to proceed with our programs, we will en masse make sure that we assist with that program. Amanda, you got anything you want to share with us?
I don't know. I was gonna ask Misty if she just had a little rundown of what we did last month for the minutes or whatever. I don't know if she has that in front of her.
I'm sorry, I don't. Because I know I did go over last month what we discussed, but yeah, sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
That's okay. That's all right.
I failed.
I don't either. Usually
Right.
I print them off, but today was kind of crazy. And
Look, I get
Jerome,
that.
after we're done, if you stay on just a minute, I have a little info about the PayPal account for invoicing and different things, so you and I can chat, so.
I want to
But
say
I-
thank you to Mitch for last month heading up the meeting with us. And Amanda, once again, you're championing our cause here during the month of March with special celebrations, Easter, etc. I know things got kind of crazy, but I will do my best to make sure that we have an agenda posted for you next month. And I'm just overjoyed to see all of your faces on here. What do you got for me, Dan?
I spoke to Carl today. He's got to be on. I can't tell. But
He
we
was,
talked
yep.
about doing a presentation for installing the nukes
When?
when they get there.
Oh, that'd be a good time. Is
May.
first week of May is what Dale is saying. My question for you right now, as a club, is there a desire for you to come together to a site? Maybe it's one of the beekeepers' yards, and just get a little look at what we're supposed to be doing now that we're coming out of winter. And if that would be possible, if any of our beekeepers that have bee yards would be willing to have some people on site. But of course, it's going to have to meet your schedule, not ours.
I'm retired. I can go anywhere at any time. If they'd like me to, or if somebody else wants to do it, everybody's got an opinion. And that's just the way it is.
Kind
So-
of natural.
I'm open to help anybody individually or as a party. I don't care.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Friends, do you have anything else? Anybody have anything that they need to bring up or a concern in terms of their hives or their the work that they're doing right now? I would love to hear you. I see that Jerome is back on. Speak up.
If I could just address Carl, if you let me know when you're going to be installing those nukes and if you want to have some people come, just let me know ahead of time so I can let everybody else in the club know. And I'll talk to Andrea also. I don't know that we have a complete list, but generally membership for is February and March. So we should have a pretty good list. I know there was somebody who signed up today. But we'll get on the members page. I'll double check that everybody has access to that that's a member this year. And we should have like a directory so you can get a hold of Dan or Jerome or Mitch or whoever to ask questions. So I'll check with her and get that up there. So.
Okay, I'll let you know whenever it's going to be, whenever, as much in advance as I can. It's whenever the bees come in.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great, Carl. And I can get it out if you let me know. I do check my stuff fairly frequently if I'm here. So.
Okay.
I have one last thing.
Yes, Dan.
If people want to discuss their hives, I find that if they take pictures, we can do a lot of things over the phone.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, let's start using our technology in new ways. And the nice thing about that, even if we were to share it back and forth over the phones, we might then be able to help diagnose and share those resources with other people as they may have similar questions. So that's just working smarter, right? Okay.
Yeah, awesome.
If we have a motion to adjourn, I would accept that.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, Dale made a motion to adjourn. If you want to go, peace out. Thank you once again. Great team, great people, great program. Awesome. Okay.
Technology.
Okay,
All right.
Amanda, I'll stay on for a few minutes.
Okay. Yeah, so I saw Mitch's email right like 2 minutes before we started the meeting about you guys you wanted to pay through PayPal. That is absolutely doable, especially if they have a PayPal account. But even if they don't, we just need an address and an email to send it to them. So
Is Mitchell still on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, do you have that, Mitchell?
I should have that by tomorrow noon for you.
okay, if you want to just email that information, I believe I just need name, address, and his email.
He
If
has
I
a
need
PayPal-
anything,
He has a PayPal account. I know that.
okay, yeah, if I
So I asked
have,
him for that information so I can get that taken care
yeah,
of.
I've been paid on Facebook through PayPal, which is super weird, but it happens, so I guess. And right now we do have $241.08 in the PayPal account from the memberships coming in. So I don't know how much you need, but that's what's in there.
$125. So
Okay,
we should.
well then that will take care of it. And then Jerome, I'll send you, I'm sure we'll get like a receipt via PayPal. So I'll just email that, forward it to you. So you have it for your records as well. So.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's just difficult keeping records of otherwise.
I know, and everything is on PayPal. And if you need the password and login information, I can send you a link to where that is, Jerome, so that you can check it anytime too. I mean, I don't know if you want to, but it's available. So,
Don't. Um,
okay.
I'm gonna leave it up to those of you who are a lot more skilled at it than I am. So I'll leave
Okay.
that up to, but someone else should have that information, maybe Mitchell or someone else who's
It's in a
Yeah.
secure, we have like a login beekeeper details thing, and I think John has it. I mean, they have access to it. I don't know that anyone besides us has looked at it, but if anybody needs like a password to the website, or what do I got here? I printed it out today so that I'd have it to get on the JOT form so they can look at the membership information, the Zoom meeting logins. It's all printed, so if something happens to me, you can get it. So,
Well, the other question I have is I got 9 membership checks so far, and I've kept copies of those checks. But I'm
okay.
just wondering if Andrea has that same information. Most of these checks came in from like through John Hanson.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Or-
I think people were sending them to the church because that was, and I did update the address on that. So I don't think anybody will send them to you now, but they might. Why don't, if you could just get me, do you have just their names, Jerome? I don't need anything else from them. Just so I can double check that they're on the list. You can email it to me, you don't have to give them to me tonight at all. If you want. And then I'll just double check.
I'll email just the names, like
Yeah,
one of them, and I've got Dale Wolf's full membership form, because he sent
okay,
it again through the church.
yep.
But the others, I'll let you know what I have.
I saw quite a few in the form last week, and I briefly looked at it today, but today ended up being a little bit more crazy than I thought it was gonna be. I did see some that are marked that they were paid by check, so I'm thinking she's put those in there and marked them as such. But I just want to double check in case I don't want to miss anybody, or make sure we got an email for them and stuff, so.
That was my concern too, was I don't want to see someone get dropped out.
Right. Yeah, it's a little
So-
confusing because we have so many different things coming in all different forms, but
It's not a problem. I just, I just made copies of the checks before I deposited them. So
okay,
I've got the information. I just
Okay,
haven't
yeah.
Shared it with anybody yet.
yeah, that's fine. If I just have a list of names, then I can just double check to make sure they're in there. And then if they aren't, I'll check with Andrea or John if they got the forms, or, well, I'll find them. I'll track them down. We're good at that.
There
so.
you go. And the other thing is, I have the forms, the sign up form for Pierce County Fair. And if we send in our reservation by May 1st deadline. So I'm thinking I'll just go ahead and do that. And
Okay.
if they don't have the fair, they'll send the check back or tear it up. So,
Right.
but that keeps our normal spot there.
That sounds good to me. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So if, I think Mitch got off, but if I get that PayPal info, I'll get that sent off. My son's no longer on spring break and my nephew goes home next week. So I will be more normal, hopefully. That's what I'm hoping. Yes, it was interesting. So yeah, if you need anything from me, you can always, you got my number and my email, and so.
I'm fine.
All right.
Great. Thank you for doing this. You're doing a great job. Super.
Oh, thanks.
That was a good program. That was a good program tonight too.
Yeah, that was awesome. I took
yeah,
a ton of notes, and then I'm like, well, we are recording it, so. I don't know. But I always get time to watch it at the same time, so that's good. So, all right, well, thanks, Jerome, and
You
thanks,
bet.
everybody. So you guys have a
Take care.
good
Yep.
night.